So I have some really exciting news to share with you today. We've been working on something really cool since mid-February, about roughly, and it's currently the end of May. So it's been a few months now and it's finally finished and I'm ready to share with you today. Whether it's your first time or you've been here before, welcome to the channel. I'm Kyle and this channel is all about regenerative farming. And we're on a journey to figure out how chestnut trees, Christmas trees, beef and poultry can all be grown and cultivated right here in Ohio. Now, to give you a little bit of backstory, when I was in grad school, I spent a few years out in Portland, Oregon, before I eventually moved back to Ohio. And my business partner, Kevin, he was in the Air Force when he spent a good amount of time in the Pacific Northwest as well. And one thing that we both really liked about the West was their coffee. And not just coffee, but the unique ways of which you can get it. And especially if you're out in like more rural areas of Washington and Oregon, there are little coffee huts everywhere. Now, where we live here in Ohio, we're kind of out in a semi-rural area, but we're also pretty close to Dayton, and there are small towns all around us, so it's a great location in that regard, but we don't have a lot of good coffee shops. So a few years back, Kevin and I started talking about how cool it would be to one day bring a West Coast style coffee hut out here in Ohio. And since our business strategy for the farm involves B2C, which is business to consumer, I've also envisioned getting a mobile hut of sorts as a way for us to sell and promote our chestnuts and various farm products to the local area. I just like the idea of a hut, and it would be a little farm-centric hut that focuses on healthy, regenerative, organic products. You probably see where I'm going with this, but a mobile coffee hut has always been part of the farm's long-term plan for the most part, but not for many, many years from now. And it was definitely slated for a later on time period once our chestnuts and beef were more fully established, which they currently are not. But Kevin was scrolling on Facebook Marketplace one day and he found what was basically a turnkey coffee hut for sale. It was a 1978 horse trailer that was converted into a coffee hut, and it came with all the necessary equipment and everything that you need to get started. So when Kevin sent that to me, I started thinking about combining like coffee and chestnuts together, which is kind of a unique thing, I think. Now, I know that chestnuts are popular abroad, but here in the US, they're not. And I've certainly not heard of coffee and chestnuts being hand in hand like that, but in my mind, they kind of go well together, right? Roasted chestnuts and a cup of coffee. And then there's the Christmas seasonal operation, and we already sell hot chocolate and popcorn in our gift shop, so this could just easily be folded into that Christmas tree operation as well. It would just be a great way for us to start getting revenue flowing into the business now, because right now Advent Fresh Market has nothing to sell except for chicken eggs. And we don't really have anything slated for the next few years. Our chestnut trees still need to grow. Our soil is still being restored, at least for another year or so, until we can put cattle out there. So theoretically, we could start selling coffee now and then get some much needed revenue rolling in. And then on top of that, we can use this hut as a way to promote regenerative farming. And so I started getting pretty excited about that. Basically, the coffee hut would be a marketing vehicle. So I gathered my thoughts on this and I sat down with Kevin and my dad to literally pitch this idea to them. And it's funny because at first they were not interested at all. I could see the worry in their eyes as I started to bring it up. But once I started to outline the pros and cons and how I was thinking about this from a marketing perspective, I think that they immediately started to get it. And of course, it will help us to market regenerative farming too and get people familiar with that terminology. And then there's the cons, of course. So some of them being that we'll need some upfront capital to buy this trailer and get it up and running. And then we'll need to learn about coffee and how to make espressos and basically become baristas, because believe it or not, prior to this, none of us have ever made an espresso before. At least one of us, another thing is that at least one of us would need to be available each morning just to run this thing. So there's going to be an ongoing time commitment to this. I myself was pretty hung up on the cons, especially the time commitment one. But once I laid it all out in front of us and I explained my marketing plan for it, I think that we were all convinced that this could be a good move for us. And we managed to work through the cons as it was all fairly doable. So I guess we just went for it at that point. I mean, we went to Columbus to go take a look at it. We ended up loving it and we brought it home with us. We've been working on getting it all ready for the past few months, which has been a lot of work. I mean, just getting this thing registered, we had to do a bunch of paperwork. I designed the logo and the branding, and then I had to get the signs printed. We built our menu and tested drinks over and over again. That was a big one. And we had to make a few minor repairs to the trailer itself. We also had to get it inspected by the health inspector, which, by the way, was our first hiccup. So before the inspector would even come out to look at it, we found out that none of our equipment was NSF certified, which, if you don't know, is a certification that all machines and equipment need to have in order to be used commercially, which meant that we had to buy all new equipment. And this is very expensive, including the espresso machine. That is also very, very expensive. So we did a ton of research into this and into espresso machines, and we ended up going with a Luca A53 Direct Plum espresso machine, which ended up working out great for us, so far at least. Also, let me know in the comments if you want to see a review video on this machine, because I have a lot of thoughts behind it. So while we're talking about it, another hiccup that we faced was the inspector telling us that we can't sell eggs or poultry out of this hut, which makes absolutely no sense, because we are able to sell eggs out of a shed on our farm, but not the coffee hut. Even if the hut was parked at the farm next to the shed, if I understand this correctly, I believe in that circumstance we still couldn't do it. But either way, it's a problem that we'll have to solve for a later time. And it just really frustrates me that so many regulations out there for farmers just completely inhibits commerce and our ability to make money as small-time farmers. Anyways, after months of planning and after we passed the health inspection, we opened for business. And I mean right after. We opened 3 days after we passed the inspection. And our first day ended up going really well, for the most part. So here are the top 5 things that we learned in the first week of being open. One is expect mistakes to happen. Just take them in stride and adapt quickly. Whatever you do, don't get hung up on them or let them slow you down, because you should be able to adapt and pivot to any problem that you face. And as I mentioned before, we had to remove all of the equipment that we bought and replace it with new NSF certified equipment. And this ended up being a blessing in disguise, because it forced us to do all kinds of research on espresso machines and allowed us to learn new terminology like what a group head is and other things that we wouldn't have learned otherwise. And we spent multiple days just getting the new espresso machine set up and calibrated. And we have all kinds of resources now and learning materials at our fingertips. And so I want to shout out to Clive Coffee, where they have a fantastic concierge service that we ended up using quite a bit. And they helped us troubleshoot some issues that we were having. And beyond that, I also recall messing up a few drinks in the hut on the first day that we opened. Those ended up being opportunities to make the necessary changes for us in the process and just avoid them from happening again. So 2 is marketing. And I'm not going to say that this was intentional, but we did not do any marketing prior to being open. It wasn't until day 3 or so that I finally started posting about the coffee hut on Facebook and social media. And we sold about $500 in gross sales our first week. On our slowest day, we sold about 3 drinks. And then our busiest day, we sold about 20 drinks. And most days were somewhere in between that. These numbers are fairly low, but it allowed us to dip our toes in and iron out the kinks, because even on day 1, word of mouth, we noticed started spreading, which is great. A few customers hunted us down on Facebook, and one of them actually asked us if we could attend one of their upcoming company events that they were having. And then I eventually added us to Street Food Finder, which is a fantastic website and app that shows all the food trucks in your area. And then I, of course, added us to Google Maps and stuff like that. And then I created a web page on our website. And so there's a lot of quote unquote marketing that still needs to be done. But my point, I guess, is that you don't have to do it all at once. Okay, number 3 is operate lean. Now, I'm a big fan of Lean Six Sigma, and we use this framework in all areas of our farm operations. And using lean for our coffee hut has just been super helpful. So obviously space is very limited in this tiny trailer, and using space efficiently is going to be important for many reasons. Only keeping what's needed and then getting rid of anything that's not going to be used, essentially. So initially we had to make a lot of guesses because we've never done this before. So on day 1, there was a lot of unknowns, especially when it came to supplies like milk and stuff like that. So we made educated guesses on how many cartons of milk we would use in that case. But we also had a runner on call that could run to the store and grab some more if we ever ran out. We also definitely made way too much drip coffee on day one. So we filled a Cambro up and we didn't sell a single drip coffee that day. So it all went to waste. So the next day we ditched the Cambro and we pre-made coffee in a thermal carafe. And then we use a Chemex to brew more on demand if needed. So the setup process was another thing. It took us nearly an hour to get set up on day one. But then by the end of the week, we got that process down to 15 minutes. We initially had these shelves that we set up to display bags of coffee and honey and stuff like that, other things that we're selling, not just coffee, not just drinks, I should say. But we noticed that during the week, people are just in a hurry to get to work and they don't really care about stuff like that. So instead, we decided to only pack those shelves and set them up on Saturdays or anytime that we're attending an event. And so it's small changes like that you can work on over time, and it just really adds up to optimize efficiency. 4 is have an elevator pitch. We're a farm fresh mobile coffee hut serving regenerative organic coffee and drinks. That's our one-liner, and that quickly and effectively describes our mission and what makes us unique. But it doesn't stop there. This is important. I try to focus on the mission statement as the main driver whenever I'm developing branding materials and customer-facing verbiage or any written copy, stuff like that. Because one thing that every customer is going to look at, in our case, is the menu. So when someone walks up to the coffee hut, the first thing they see is our menu. And so I wanted this to directly reflect what is important to us. So every item on the menu deliberately and thoughtfully lists the ingredients that we are putting into it. This also helps describe the drinks in case someone doesn't know the difference between an Americano or a Cortado. But I want people to know that our espresso isn't just an ordinary espresso. It's a regenerative organic espresso. I mean, how many cafes or coffee shops have you been to that serves regenerative organic coffee? That makes us pretty unique. And we don't just use regular milk in our lattes. We use organic grass-fed whole milk. And you want honey in that? That's not just honey. It's honey that's raw and unfiltered, locally sourced from Little Fox Farm, which is a local nearby farm, homestead, regenerative homestead actually, that has some really phenomenal honey. So you see where I'm going with this. For us, the healthy farm fresh ingredients are what makes us unique from others. And we really want to just lean into that. Now, another thing is we also have a container of chestnuts on display as a conversational starter. Chestnut is in the name, but it's not yet on our menu. And we certainly want people asking about this. As I previously mentioned, we plan to add roasted chestnuts to the menu at a later point. So why not build some anticipation or at least some curiosity and educate people about chestnuts in the meantime. So I have a pitch ready for when someone asks about that too. But every coffee hut, every brand, every company, etc., should have something that makes them unique and separates them from the competition. And that's what we want to lean into and make sure that it's clear and obvious to the customer. And lastly, number 5 is track everything. Since this is our first time ever selling coffee, let alone coffee out of a mobile food truck, we've had to make a lot of guesses. How much supply do we need for just about everything? Coffee beans, milk, cups, syrup, jugs of water, Sani tablets. What time should our hours of operation be? Where should we park the trailer? Will this location be better than that location? How many customers will we get in a single day? Work weeks versus weekends, and so on and so on. We knew that we wouldn't have answers to a lot of these questions until we just give it a try and we track our data and see what works and what doesn't work over time. And it doesn't really matter how you track it, of course. It's just as long as you track it in a way that's useful for you. But this day and age, it's easier than ever to track anything. So, for example, we use Square for our POS, which is a point of sale terminal. And naturally, this type of thing tracks a lot. You can look at payment type, so credit versus cash, and surprisingly, it's been about 50-50, so a lot of people pay with cash. And I can see every sale that can tell me what item is on the menu, like which item sells the most versus what sells the least. And there's a lot more that you can get out of this point of sale system, but I think you get the gist of it. We're only a week in, so there's not much in terms of analytics, but over time, these sales reports will become very insightful, especially when we overlay them with the different locations that we're trying out. So today we've gotten permission to park our trailer for free at 2 different locations, and we just got permission to do a third location that we're gonna try out here in a couple of weeks. And I'm really curious to see how this third location does, because theoretically, it's just a great location. It has a very busy intersection. It's in a parking lot that has a YMCA, a medical center, and a community college all part of that parking lot. And then it's surrounded by neighborhoods, so I'm hopeful that we can grab people heading to work. But we'll be tracking that as well, so later on we can determine which times and locations work best for us, and we could start a more consistent and reliable schedule. Okay, so that's our brand new coffee hut, and I'm really excited to see how this new venture turns out. So let me know if you guys are interested in this type of content, and if you are interested, I can make more videos covering this coffee hut and show you guys how things turn out. I know that we have a few big events that we're planning to attend later on this summer, so stay tuned for that if you want to see more coverage on the coffee hut. And if you're into regenerative farming, Christmas trees, chestnuts, poultry, and beef, and now coffee, then hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next wild idea that we tackle. I'm Kyle, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.